Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, The Perfect Life. Derek Rodriguez had always believed in absolutes. In his 12 years as a Marine Corps reconnaissance specialist, there was mission success or mission failure, life or death, trust or betrayal. No gray areas, no second chances. Now, at 38, he applied that same unwavering logic to his civilian life as a private security consultant for high-profile clients. His wife of 10 years, Linda, often joked that he was too rigid, too serious. "You need to learn to bend, Derek, or you'll break," she'd say with that laugh that once made his heart skip. Their 6-year-old son, Timothy, was the perfect blend of both parents. Derek's determination and Linda's charm. At least, that's what Derek thought until 3 months ago when strange inconsistencies began appearing in his perfectly ordered world. Linda, a freelance marketing consultant, had suddenly become busier than ever. Late nights at the office, weekend conferences that seemed to multiply, and a new glow about her that Derek initially attributed to career success. She'd lost weight, changed her perfume, and started paying more attention to her appearance. When Derek mentioned it, she'd brush it off as finally taking care of myself again. But Derek's training had taught him to notice details others missed. The way Linda now kept her phone face down during dinner. How she'd shower immediately after coming home, even from short errands. The receipts for restaurants he'd never been to. Charged her credit card during lunch hours when she claimed to be working from home. Timothy had been acting strange, too. More withdrawn, less talkative about his daily activities. The boy who used to chatter endlessly about school and friends now gave monosyllabic answers when Derek asked about his day. Derek attributed it to normal childhood phases, but his instincts whispered otherwise. The wedding invitation had arrived 6 weeks ago. Linda's sister-in-law, Patricia, was marrying her longtime boyfriend in an intimate ceremony at the historic Riverside Manor. Derek had never particularly liked Patricia, too dramatic, too attention-seeking, but family was family. Linda had been unusually excited about the event, spending considerable time shopping for the perfect dress and coordinating details with other family members. "It'll be good for us to get out and celebrate something happy," Linda had said, her eyes bright with an enthusiasm Derek hadn't seen directed at him in months. "Timothy loves weddings, and it's been too long since we've done something as a family." Derek agreed, though he noticed Linda spent more time on her phone during the weeks leading up to the wedding than she did talking to him. She claimed it was all wedding-related coordination, helping Patricia with last-minute details. Derek wanted to believe her, but his trained mind cataloged every inconsistency, every small lie that didn't quite align. The morning of the wedding, Derek watched Linda get ready with the precision of someone preparing for battle. Every detail was carefully considered. The way her dress hugged her newly svelte figure, the jewelry that caught the light just so, the makeup applied with artistic precision. She looked stunning, more beautiful than she had in years, and Derek felt a familiar pang of love mixed with something darker he couldn't quite name. "You look incredible," he told her honestly, adjusting his tie in their bedroom mirror. Linda smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Thank you. I just want everything to be perfect today." Timothy was unusually quiet during the drive to Riverside Manor, staring out the window with an intensity that seemed too mature for his 6 years. Derek caught his son's eyes in the rearview mirror several times, noting how Timothy looked away quickly each time, as if hiding something. "You okay, buddy?" Derek asked as they pulled into the manor's circular driveway. Timothy nodded but didn't speak. Derek made a mental note to check in with his son again later. The ceremony itself was picture perfect. Patricia looked radiant in her flowing white gown, and her new husband beamed with genuine happiness. Derek found himself studying the couple, remembering his own wedding day with Linda. The promises they'd made, the future they'd planned together. Everything had seemed so certain then, so permanent. As they moved to the reception, Derek noticed how Linda's attention seemed divided. She was present but distracted, checking her phone discreetly and scanning the crowd with an urgency that didn't match the relaxed atmosphere. When Derek asked if she was expecting an important work call, she quickly shook her head and slipped the phone back into her purse. "Just making sure I don't miss any of the photographer's group shots," she explained, but Derek noticed her hand trembling slightly as she reached for her wine glass. They found their assigned table near the back of the elegantly decorated reception hall. Timothy sat between them, picking at his food and observing the other guests with the same intense focus Derek had noticed in the car. The boy's behavior was becoming increasingly concerning, but before Derek could address it, the wedding party's entrance began, complete with a live band and coordinated lighting that transformed the space into something magical. Derek tried to relax, to enjoy the moment, but years of training had made hypervigilance his default state. He noticed everything: the way the best man's speech seemed rehearsed, how the maid of honor kept glancing toward their table, the photographer who seemed more interested in capturing candid moments than posed shots. Most disturbing of all was how Linda kept checking her phone despite her earlier explanation about group photos. As the evening progressed, Derek's unease grew. Linda excused herself twice for bathroom breaks that lasted longer than necessary. During this second absence, Derek watched her through the reception hall's large windows as she stood outside, engaged in what appeared to be an intense phone conversation. When she returned, her cheeks were flushed, and she seemed almost giddy with excitement. "Everything all right?" Derek asked. "Perfect," Linda replied, but her smile seemed forced. "Just family drama. You know how weddings bring out everyone's emotions." Derek nodded, but something about her answer felt rehearsed, like she'd been practicing it. He was about to probe further when Timothy suddenly grabbed his arm with surprising strength. Chapter 2. The Discovery. "Dad, let's go home. Right now." Timothy's whisper carried an urgency that made Derek's blood run cold. The boy's small hand gripped Derek's forearm with desperate intensity, his 6-year-old face pale with fear. Derek immediately shifted into alert mode, scanning the reception hall for potential threats while keeping his voice calm and reassuring. "What's wrong, buddy?" Timothy's eyes darted around nervously before fixing on Derek's face. "You didn't look under the table, did you?" The question seemed innocent enough, but something in Timothy's tone, a mixture of knowledge and terror, made Derek's instincts scream danger. He'd learned to trust his son's observations. Children often notice things adults missed, and Timothy had always been particularly perceptive. Derek slowly bent down, pretending to retrieve a dropped napkin while his eyes adjusted to the dim space beneath the table. What he saw there made his world tilt on its axis. Taped to the underside of the table was a small recording device, its red light blinking steadily. But that wasn't what froze Derek's blood. Next to it was a handwritten note in Linda's distinctive script. "Everything's ready. He suspects nothing. After the toast, we'll have everything we need." Derek's military training kicked in automatically. His face remained neutral, his breathing steady, but internally, every alarm was sounding. He straightened slowly, his mind racing through possibilities and implications. The recording device explained Linda's insistence on this particular table, her nervous energy, her phone calls. Someone was documenting their conversation, their interaction as a family. He looked at Timothy, really looked at him, and saw not a confused 6-year-old, but a child carrying the weight of adult knowledge. "How long have you known?" Derek asked quietly. Timothy's lower lip trembled. "I heard Mommy talking on the phone last week. She said mean things about you, Daddy. Really mean things. And she was talking to Uncle Bryce." Uncle Bryce, Derek's older brother by 3 years, the successful real estate developer who had always resented Derek's military service and close relationship with their father. Bryce had been the golden child until Derek enlisted and earned their father's respect through service and sacrifice. The sibling rivalry had never truly died, but Derek had never imagined it would manifest in such betrayal. "What kind of mean things?" Derek asked, keeping his voice gentle despite the rage building in his chest. Timothy glanced around to make sure no one was listening, then leaned closer. "She said you were boring and mean, and that she couldn't wait to take half of everything and start over." and Uncle Bryce said he loved her and they could be together soon. The pieces clicked into place with devastating clarity. Linda's behavior, her late nights, her sudden interest in fitness and appearance. It wasn't for herself or her career. It was for Bryce. Derek's own brother had been systematically seducing his wife, probably for months or even years. The recording device wasn't random. It was part of a calculated plan to gather evidence for what would undoubtedly be a vicious divorce designed to destroy Derek financially and emotionally. Derek's hands remained steady as he reached for his water glass, but inside, something fundamental shifted. The part of him that had tried to believe in second chances, in the possibility of redemption, died quietly. What replaced it was something colder, more calculating, the part of him that had made impossible decisions in impossible places and never looked back. "Timothy," Derek said quietly, "we're going to leave now, but we need to be very careful. Can you do exactly what Daddy tells you?" The boy nodded solemnly, understanding instinctively that this was serious business. Derek reached into his jacket and palmed his phone, activating the camera function with practiced discretion. He took several photos of the recording device and note, making sure to capture Linda's handwriting clearly. Then he sent a quick text to his personal attorney. "Emergency meeting tomorrow morning. Evidence of adultery and conspiracy." Linda returned from her latest bathroom break, just as Derek was helping Timothy into his jacket. Her face fell when she saw them preparing to leave. "Where are you going?" "The reception is just getting started." "Timothy isn't feeling well," Derek replied smoothly. "I think it's best if we head home early." Linda's eyes darted to the table, then back to Derek's face, searching for any sign that her plan had been discovered. "Maybe I should come with you," she offered, but Derek could hear the reluctance in her voice. "No need to ruin your evening. Stay and enjoy the party. Timothy and I will be fine." Linda hesitated, clearly torn between maintaining her cover and ensuring her recording device remained undisturbed. "Are you sure? I hate to leave you alone with a sick child. I've handled worse situations with less support," Derek replied, his tone carrying just enough edge to remind her of his military background. "We'll be fine." He guided Timothy toward the exit, moving with purposeful casualness that wouldn't attract attention. As they walked away, Derek could feel Linda's eyes burning into his back, probably wondering whether her elaborate scheme had been compromised. In the car, Timothy was quiet until they were well away from Riverside Manor. Then, in a small voice, he asked, "Are you and Mommy getting divorced?" Derek's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What makes you ask that, buddy? Kids at school say that's what happens when parents stop loving each other. And Mommy doesn't look at you the same way anymore." The observation hit Derek harder than any physical blow. If a 6-year-old could see the dissolution of their marriage, it had been crumbling longer than Derek had realized. He'd been so focused on work, on providing and protecting, that he'd missed the slow erosion of everything he'd thought was solid. "Sometimes adults make choices that hurt other people," Derek said carefully. "But no matter what happens between Mommy and me, I will always love you, and I will always be your father. That never changes." Timothy nodded, but Derek could see tears forming in his son's eyes. "Will I still get to live with you?" The question ignited something fierce and protective in Derek's chest. The recording device, Linda's betrayal, even Bryce's treachery, all of it paled compared to the thought of losing daily access to his son. Whatever Linda and Bryce had planned, whatever evidence they thought they were gathering, Derek would make sure their scheme backfired spectacularly. "You'll always have a home with me," Derek promised, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. As they drove through the quiet suburbs toward their house, a house that no longer felt like home, Derek's mind was already working through possibilities. His military contacts, his security industry connections, his intimate knowledge of surveillance and counter-surveillance techniques. Linda and Bryce thought they were playing chess, but they just declared war on someone who'd spent his career in much deadlier games. Derek Rodriguez had never lost a mission that mattered. He didn't intend to start now. Chapter 3. The Gathering Storm. Derek spent the sleepless hours after midnight in his home office, the door locked and his laptop screen casting blue light across his face. Timothy was finally asleep after 2 bedtime stories and multiple reassurances that everything would be okay. Derek had tucked his son in with promises he intended to keep, no matter the cost. Linda had returned home around 1 a.m., her heels clicking against the hardwood floors with the careful precision of someone trying not to appear intoxicated. She'd peeked into Derek's office, offering a vague explanation about helping clean up after the reception, but Derek had simply nodded and continued working. She seemed relieved by his apparent disinterest and retreated to their bedroom without further conversation. What Linda didn't know was that Derek had spent those midnight hours conducting reconnaissance on his own life. Bank statements, phone records, credit card transactions, property deeds, all of it spread across his computer screen in a pattern that told a story of systematic betrayal. The evidence was damning and thorough. The private investigator Derek had used for client background checks had been more than willing to work through the night for triple rates. Marcus Holloway was an ex-cop with a reputation for discretion and results. By dawn, Derek had a comprehensive dossier on Linda and Bryce's relationship, complete with time-stamped photographs, hotel receipts, and communication records. The affair had been going on for 8 months, beginning during a family barbecue where Derek had been called away for a work emergency. It wasn't casual or accidental. It was calculated, passionate, and surprisingly sophisticated. Bryce had been funding Linda's business trips and work conferences while Derek paid their family's bills. They'd been using burner phones for most communication, but had gotten careless with their personal devices in recent weeks, probably confident that Derek remained oblivious. Most disturbing was the evidence of their longer-term planning. Bryce had been consulting with a divorce attorney for 3 months, strategizing how to maximize Linda's settlement while minimizing her responsibility for marital debt. They discussed claiming emotional abuse, financial control, and even military-related PTSD as grounds for Linda needing substantial support. Derek's service record, which he'd always considered an honor, was being weaponized against him. But Derek had found something else in his digital investigation. Something that changed the entire game. Bryce's real estate business, while successful on the surface, was heavily leveraged and dependent on a few major investors. More importantly, Bryce had been cutting corners on safety inspections and using substandard materials in his low-income housing developments. The potential liability was enormous if the right person were to document the violations and present them to the proper authorities. Derek had also discovered that Linda's marketing consultancy was essentially fictional. She'd been using the business as a front to launder money for Bryce's accounts, creating fake invoices for services never rendered. It was tax fraud on a significant scale, potentially criminal, and completely unrelated to their affair. It seemed his wife and brother weren't just betrayers, they were criminals. At 6 a.m., Derek made his first phone call of the day to Ben Torres, his former squad leader who now ran a private military contracting firm in Virginia. Ben specialized in what he called complex problem resolution for clients who needed situations handled with absolute discretion. Derek Rodriguez. Ben's gravelly voice came through the secure line. Been a while, brother. What's the situation? I need a full workup on 2 targets, Derek said without preamble. My wife and my brother. They're planning to destroy me financially and take my son. I need leverage. I need it fast. Ben was quiet for a moment. This personal or professional? Both. They've been embezzling money and committing fraud, but I need more than that. I need something that makes them understand they've made a catastrophic mistake. Copy that. Send me everything you have. I'll have a team on it within 12 hours. Derek's second call was to his attorney, Rachel Kim, a former military JAG officer who specialized in complex divorce cases involving security clearances and military assets. She agreed to meet him at 9 a.m. Sunday morning for an emergency consultation. The third call was to his father, retired Colonel Miguel Rodriguez, whose Sunday morning run was interrupted by news that his sons were at war with each other. I always knew Bryce resented you, Miguel said after Derek explained the situation. But I never thought he'd stoop to this level of betrayal. What's your plan, son? I'm going to destroy them both, Derek replied without hesitation. Systematically, completely, and permanently. By the time I'm finished, they'll wish they'd never met each other, let alone decided to betray our family. Be careful, Derek. Revenge can consume you if you're not disciplined about it. This isn't revenge, Dad. It's justice. And justice requires precision. By 8 a.m., Linda was awake and moving around the house with nervous energy. She kept glancing at Derek, probably wondering if his early departure from the wedding had disrupted her recording plans. Derek maintained his normal Sunday routine: coffee, news, preparation for Timothy's soccer game, while internally cataloging every word and action for future use. "How are you feeling this morning?" Linda asked, her tone carefully casual. "You seemed tired last night." "I'm fine," Derek replied. "Timothy's feeling better too. Kids bounce back quickly." Linda nodded, but Derek noticed her relief was palpable. She thought her secret was safe, that her elaborate plan remained undetected. It was almost enough to make Derek feel sorry for her. Almost. "I was thinking," Linda continued, "maybe we should plan a family vacation soon. Just the three of us. We haven't done that in a while." The suggestion was so audacious that Derek almost laughed. She was already planning her exit strategy, probably hoping to gather more evidence of his controlling behavior or create situations where she could document his reactions to stress. Every conversation was now a potential weapon in her arsenal. "That sounds nice," Derek agreed. "Where were you thinking?" "Maybe somewhere relaxing. A beach resort where we can just unwind and reconnect as a family." Derek nodded thoughtfully, already imagining how such a trip would be documented and later used against him in court. Linda's strategic thinking was actually impressive, if not for the fact that it was aimed at destroying him. His phone buzzed with a text from Ben Torres. "Preliminary findings interesting. Your brother has bigger problems than you know. Full briefing in 24 hours. Derek smiled for the first time since discovering the recording device. Whatever Bryce and Linda had planned, they were about to learn that Derek Rodriguez was not the soft target they'd assumed him to be. His military training hadn't made him paranoid. It had made him prepared. And preparation, applied with surgical precision, was about to become their worst nightmare. "I need to run some errands this morning," Derek told Linda. "Timothy has soccer practice at noon, so I'll be back by then." "Of course," Linda replied, probably already planning how to use his absence to coordinate with Bryce. "Take your time." Derek kissed her forehead, a gesture that felt like saying goodbye to someone already dead. In 48 hours, Linda and Bryce's world would begin crumbling around them. Derek would make sure of it. As he drove toward his attorney's office, Derek caught himself humming an old military cadence. It felt good to be back in mission mode, to have a clear objective and the tools to achieve it. Linda and Bryce had declared war on his family. Now, they were going to learn what war actually looked like. Chapter 4. The counterattack begins. Derek's meeting with attorney Rachel Kim lasted 3 hours and covered every possible angle of attack and defense. Rachel had handled enough military divorces to understand the unique vulnerabilities of service members, and she was particularly skilled at turning those vulnerabilities into strengths when her clients were prepared to fight back. The recording device gives us probable cause for an investigation into their other activities, Rachel explained, spreading the printed evidence across her conference table. "If we can prove conspiracy and fraud, we can flip this entire situation. Instead of you being the defendant in a messy divorce, they become the defendants in a criminal case." Derek studied the financial documents that painted a clear picture of Bryce and Linda's criminal enterprise. "How long do we have before they make their move?" "Based on a timeline, I'd guess they're planning to file within the next 2 weeks. The recording device suggests they want evidence of you in an uncontrolled emotional state, probably triggered by some manufactured crisis. Classic manipulation technique. Then we strike first," Derek decided. "I want restraining orders, asset freezes, and criminal referrals filed by Wednesday morning." Rachel nodded approvingly. "I like working with clients who understand preemptive action. But Derek, once we do this, there's no going back. This becomes total war." It became total war the moment they decided to involve my son in their scheme. That afternoon, Derek attended Timothy's soccer game with the focused intensity of someone gathering intelligence. Linda arrived separately, claiming she'd been running last-minute errands. But Derek noticed her phone was buzzing constantly with messages she answered discreetly from the sidelines. During halftime, Derek's own phone rang with a call from Ben Torres. "Your brother is in deep trouble," Ben reported without preamble. "The construction shortcuts are worse than you thought. 3 of his buildings have serious structural issues that could result in casualties if there's an earthquake or major storm. He's been bribing inspectors and falsifying safety reports for 2 years. What about financial exposure? Massive. If the right person filed complaints with the state licensing board and building safety commission, he'd be looking at criminal charges, civil liability in the millions, and complete business destruction. His insurance won't cover criminal acts, so he'd be personally liable for everything." Derek felt a cold satisfaction settle in his chest. What else? "The money laundering through your wife's fake business is amateur hour compared to what Bryce has been doing. He's been using construction loans for personal expenses and investor money for project materials. It's a house of cards that could collapse with the right pressure. I want documentation for everything. Full evidence packages ready from multiple agencies. Already working on it. But Derek, there's something else. Our surveillance team picked up a conversation between your wife and brother yesterday. They're planning to accuse you of threatening them physically. They want to provoke an incident they can document." Derek's jaw tightened. The recording device at the wedding had been just the beginning of their evidence-gathering operation. They were trying to create a narrative of him as an unstable veteran prone to violence, a story that would resonate with judges and custody evaluators. "When and where?" "Tomorrow night. Your wife is planning to confront you about some manufactured issue when your son isn't around. Bryce will be nearby, probably recording everything. They want you to lose control so they can claim fear for their safety." "Perfect," Derek said, surprising Ben with his calm response. "That gives us exactly what we need." "How do you figure?" "Because I'm going to give them exactly what they want, except it won't go the way they planned." After the soccer game, Derek spent the evening setting up his own surveillance system throughout the house. Micro cameras and audio recording devices, professionally installed and completely undetectable. If Linda and Bryce wanted to document his behavior, Derek would make sure he had comprehensive documentation of theirs. He also reached out to Dr. Sarah Martinez, the child psychologist who had evaluated Timothy the previous year when he'd been having nightmares. Dr. Martinez agreed to an emergency session on Monday morning to assess Timothy's emotional state and document any signs of manipulation or coaching by adults. Monday morning brought the first phase of Derek's counterattack. While Linda was at her fake job and Timothy was at school, Derek met with representatives from the State Building Safety Commission, the Tax Fraud Investigation Unit, and the Real Estate Licensing Board. Each agency received comprehensive evidence packages documenting Bryce's criminal activities, complete with dates, financial records, and witness statements. By noon, search warrants were being prepared for Bryce's business offices and personal residence. The agencies moved quickly when presented with evidence of safety violations that could result in public harm. Derek's afternoon was spent with Dr. Martinez and Timothy, whose psychological evaluation revealed a child under significant stress from adult conflicts he didn't fully understand. Timothy had been coached to keep secrets about his mother's phone conversations and had been explicitly told not to mention certain people who had visited their house when Derek was away. This child is exhibiting signs of emotional manipulation, Dr. Martinez told Derek privately. He's been put in the position of keeping adult secrets, which is psychologically harmful. I'm legally obligated to report this to Child Protective Services. Do what you think is best for Timothy, Derek replied. His welfare is my primary concern. That evening, Derek waited for Linda's manufactured confrontation with the patience of a sniper. She arrived home at 7 p.m., clearly agitated and checking her phone constantly. At 7:30, she started the fight they'd obviously planned. "Derek, we need to talk about your behavior lately," Linda began, her voice carrying artificial concern. "Timothy told me you've been asking him strange questions about our family." Derek remained calm, aware that every word was being recorded by multiple devices, his and theirs. "I've been concerned about his emotional state. He seems stressed about something." The only thing stressing him is your paranoid questioning. You're making him afraid of his own mother. The accusation was perfectly calculated to provoke anger, but Derek had spent years learning to control his emotions under pressure. Instead of responding with the outburst they expected, he asked quietly, "Linda, is there anything you need to tell me about our marriage?" The question clearly wasn't in their script. Linda hesitated, glancing toward the window where Bryce was undoubtedly positioned with recording equipment. "What kind of question is that?" she deflected. "The kind of question a husband asks when he knows his wife is planning to leave him." Linda's face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." Derek pulled out his phone and played a recorded conversation between Linda and Bryce, captured by Ben Torres' surveillance team. Their voices filled the room, discussing timeline for divorce filing, asset division, and their elaborate plan to frame Derek as an abusive husband. "The question is," Derek said into the stunned silence, "whether you want to face this as adults or continue with your pathetic charade." Linda stared at the phone, her entire body trembling with the realization that their carefully planned operation had been compromised from the beginning. Outside, Derek could see Bryce's silhouette moving quickly away from the window. "How long have you known?" Linda whispered. "Since Timothy showed me the recording device at the wedding," Derek replied. "You involved our son in your scheme to destroy me. That was your first mistake." "Derek, I can explain." "No need. Tomorrow morning, you'll be served with divorce papers, restraining orders, and criminal fraud charges. Bryce will be dealing with building safety violations, construction fraud, and tax evasion charges. Your fake business will be audited by the IRS, and your personal assets will be frozen pending investigation." Linda's face cycled through disbelief, fear, and finally desperate anger. "You can't prove anything." Derek smiled coldly. "Linda, I've spent years in situations where failure meant death. You and Bryce thought you were playing games with someone who would just roll over and accept betrayal. You were wrong." As Linda fled the house, probably to warn Bryce of their complete exposure, Derek felt the familiar satisfaction of a mission accomplished. But this was just the beginning. Tomorrow, the real destruction would begin. Chapter 5. The Destruction Unfolds. Tuesday morning arrived with the precision of a military operation. Derek was awake at 0500, reviewing final preparations while Linda slept fitfully in their guest bedroom. She'd moved there after their confrontation, claiming she needed space to think, but Derek knew she was actually coordinating with Bryce about damage control. What neither of them realized was that Ben Torres' team had compromised their communications completely. Every panicked phone call, every desperate text message, every frantic email was being monitored and recorded. Linda and Bryce's attempt to salvage their situation was only providing more evidence of their criminal conspiracy. At 0800, Derek received confirmation that the first wave of legal actions had been executed flawlessly. Process servers had delivered papers to both Linda and Bryce simultaneously, ensuring neither could warn the other. Restraining orders prohibited them from contacting each other, accessing joint assets, or coming within 500 feet of Derek or Timothy. Bryce's construction company was raided by state building inspectors and fraud investigators at 0830. Workers were evacuated from 3 job sites pending safety evaluations, and Bryce's business bank accounts were frozen pending investigation. Local news crews, tipped off by anonymous sources, captured footage of Bryce being escorted from his offices in handcuffs. Linda's morning was equally devastating. IRS agents arrived at her fake business address, a mail drop service she'd been using to create the illusion of legitimate operations. When they discovered the fraudulent setup, they expanded their investigation to include her personal finances and tax returns for the past 3 years. Derek watched the morning's developments unfold from his attorney's office, where he was finalizing custody arrangements and asset protection strategies. Rachel Kim had arranged for an emergency hearing that afternoon, where Derek would present evidence of Linda's unfitness as a parent due to her criminal activities and psychological manipulation of Timothy. The judge will likely grant temporary full custody given the evidence of parental alienation and criminal conspiracy, Rachel explained. But prepare yourself for Linda to make serious accusations in response. Desperate people do desperate things. Derek nodded. Having anticipated this escalation, I've documented everything and have witnesses for my whereabouts during any time period she might claim abuse or threats occurred. At noon, Derek received an unexpected call from his father. "Derek, Bryce just showed up at my house. He's panicking, claiming you've destroyed his life over a simple affair." "What should I tell him?" "Tell him the truth," Derek replied. "This isn't about an affair. It's about fraud, conspiracy, and involving my son in a criminal scheme. If he wanted to sleep with my wife, he should have done it honestly instead of trying to destroy me in the process. He's asking me to intercede to convince you to call off the investigations." "Dad, would you intercede if a stranger had committed fraud against me and tried to manipulate your grandson?" "Of course not." "Then don't intercede now. Bryce chose to be my enemy when he chose to betray our family." The afternoon custody hearing was a masterclass in legal preparation. Derek's attorney presented a devastating case that painted Linda as a manipulative criminal who had involved a minor child in adult conspiracy. The evidence included Timothy's psychological evaluation, recordings of Linda coaching the boy to keep secrets, financial documents proving fraud, and testimony from multiple witnesses about Linda's behavior and associations. Linda's hastily retained attorney attempted to portray Derek as a controlling military veteran prone to surveillance and paranoia, but the argument fell apart when confronted with the mountain of evidence proving Linda's actual criminal activities. "Your Honor," Derek testified when called to the stand, "I served my country for 12 years in situations where trust and reliability were matters of life and death. I applied those same standards to my family life. When that trust was betrayed, I investigated like any reasonable person would. What I discovered wasn't marital problems. It was criminal conspiracy designed to defraud me and psychologically damage my son." The judge, a veteran herself, was clearly sympathetic to Derek's position. "Mrs. Rodriguez, the evidence suggests you've not only engaged in adultery, but also fraud, conspiracy, and child manipulation. Pending resolution of the criminal charges against you, I'm granting Mr. Rodriguez temporary full custody of the minor child." Linda's face crumpled as the reality of her situation hit home. She'd lost her husband, her son, her freedom, and her financial security in a single day. As she was led from the courtroom by her attorney, Derek felt no satisfaction, only cold justice. That evening, Derek picked up Timothy from school personally, explaining in age-appropriate terms that there would be some changes in their living arrangements while the adults sorted out some complicated problems. "Is Mommy in trouble?" Timothy asked as they drove home. "Yes, buddy. She made some choices that weren't good for our family. But none of this is your fault, and it doesn't change how much both Mommy and Daddy love you." "Will she go to jail?" Derek considered the question carefully. Linda was facing multiple felony charges with substantial evidence against her. Even with plea negotiations, prison time was likely. "I don't know yet," Derek answered honestly. "But whatever happens, you'll always have a safe home with me." That night, Derek received a call from Ben Torres with an update on Bryce's situation. "Your brother's business is completely finished. 3 buildings are condemned pending major repairs. Investigators found evidence of bribery and fraud going back 5 years, and his insurance company is denying coverage for criminal acts. He's looking at bankruptcy, criminal charges, and civil lawsuits from investors and tenants." What's his response? He's hired a crisis management firm and is trying to blame everything on rogue employees and bad contractors. But the evidence trail leads directly to him, and his own communications contradict his claims of innocence. Derek felt the familiar satisfaction of a mission completed successfully. Bryce had spent years resenting Derek's achievements and respect within their family. Now he would spend years dealing with the consequences of his choices. As Derek tucked Timothy into bed that night, his son asked one more question. "Daddy, are you sad about Mommy?" Derek considered the question seriously. Was he sad about Linda? Or was he sad about the illusion of Linda that had never really existed? "I'm sad that our family changed," Derek answered carefully. "But I'm not sad that we discovered the truth. Sometimes the truth hurts, but it's always better than living with lies." Timothy nodded with the serious wisdom of a child who had learned too much about adult deception too early. "I love you, Daddy. I love you too, buddy. Always. As Derek turned off the lights and closed Timothy's bedroom door, he felt something he hadn't experienced in months: peace. The mission was far from over. There would be trials, appeals, and years of legal proceedings. But the primary objective had been achieved. His son was safe, his betrayers were facing justice, and Derek Rodriguez had once again proven that underestimating him was a costly mistake. Chapter 6: The Price of Betrayal. 3 weeks after the initial raids and arrests, Derek stood in what had once been Bryce's luxurious downtown office, now empty except for boxes of evidence being cataloged by federal investigators. Bryce's construction empire had collapsed with stunning speed once the investigation revealed the full scope of his criminal activities. The morning newspaper featured a front-page story about the scandal, complete with photos of condemned buildings and interviews with displaced tenants. Bryce Rodriguez, once considered one of the city's most promising young developers, was now facing federal charges for fraud, bribery, and endangering public safety. The estimated financial damage exceeded $12 million, with potential criminal liability that could result in decades in prison. Derek felt no satisfaction looking at the destruction of his brother's life, only a cold sense of justice completed. Bryce had chosen to attack Derek's family through deception and betrayal. Derek had responded with a systematic application of truth and law. The outcome was inevitable once Bryce decided to play by rules he didn't understand. Linda's situation was equally devastating, but more personally painful for Derek to witness. The woman he'd once loved was now facing her own set of federal charges, including tax fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. Her fraudulent business had generated over $200,000 in unreported income, all of which would now be subject to penalties, interest, and criminal prosecution. More damaging than the financial crimes was the custody evaluation that had been completed the previous week. Dr. Martinez's report documented clear evidence of parental alienation and psychological manipulation of Timothy. Linda had coached their 6-year-old son to spy on Derek, to keep secrets about adult relationships, and to provide information that could be used in legal proceedings. The child exhibits signs of anxiety and confusion consistent with being placed in age-inappropriate roles by the mother, Dr. Martinez had written. The pattern of behavior suggests systematic manipulation designed to serve the mother's interests at the expense of the child's emotional well-being. The report recommended supervised visitation only, with mandatory psychological evaluation and parenting classes before any consideration of expanded custody. Linda would see Timothy for 2 hours every other weekend, under professional supervision, until she could demonstrate rehabilitation and genuine concern for his welfare. Derek found himself thinking about Linda more than he wanted to admit. Not the woman who had betrayed him, but the young marketing professional he'd fallen in love with 10 years ago. That woman had been ambitious, intelligent, and genuinely caring. Somewhere along the way, she had transformed into someone capable of using their own child as a weapon. The psychological evaluations ordered by the court had revealed troubling patterns in Linda's thinking. She showed signs of narcissistic personality disorder, with an inability to accept responsibility for her actions and a tendency to blame others for consequences of her choices. The affair with Bryce hadn't been a moment of weakness. It had been the culmination of years of resentment and entitlement that Derek had never recognized. She believes she deserves whatever she wants, the court-appointed psychologist had explained to Derek during a private consultation. When reality doesn't match her expectations, she manipulates situations and people to create the outcome she desires. Your son became a tool in that manipulation. Derek had asked the question that haunted him. Could I have prevented this? Were there warning signs I missed? Mr. Rodriguez, people with these personality patterns are often very skilled at hiding their true nature, especially early in relationships. They present the version of themselves that serves their immediate needs. Your military training probably made you value loyalty and directness, which would have made you less likely to recognize sophisticated deception in someone you trusted. The explanation helped, but didn't eliminate Derek's sense that he should have protected Timothy better. A 6-year-old child shouldn't have to carry the weight of adult secrets or worry about betraying his father's trust. Timothy was adapting to their new reality with remarkable resilience, though Derek knew the long-term effects of his parents' divorce would unfold over years. They'd started weekly therapy sessions with a child psychologist who specialized in helping children process parental conflict and betrayal. "He's actually doing better than many children in similar situations," Dr. Ellen Rodriguez, no relation, had told Derek after Timothy's third session. "He feels safe with you, and he understands that the problems between his parents weren't his fault. Children are remarkably adaptable when they have at least one stable, trustworthy parent." Derek's father had become a regular presence in their lives, helping with Timothy's care and providing the kind of grandfatherly stability that helped counterbalance the chaos. Miguel Rodriguez had been devastated by Bryce's betrayal, but philosophical about its inevitability. Bryce always wanted what others had instead of building something for himself. Miguel had observed during one of their Sunday dinners, "I hoped military values would eventually influence him through your example, but some people are too focused on shortcuts to appreciate honest work." The financial aspects of the divorce had been surprisingly straightforward once Linda's criminal activities were exposed. The prenuptial agreement Derek had insisted on before their marriage protected most of his assets, and Linda's fraud conviction eliminated any claim to spousal support. She would receive only a minimal settlement from marital assets acquired after her criminal activities began. Derek's security consulting business had actually benefited from the publicity surrounding his methodical destruction of Linda and Bryce's schemes. Corporate clients were impressed by his thoroughness and discretion, leading to several high-profile contracts that significantly increased his income. "You've become something of a legend in our industry," Ben Torres had told Derek during their latest briefing. "People are saying if Derek Rodriguez can dismantle his own family's conspiracies this efficiently, imagine what he could do to business competitors or hostile takeover attempts." Derek found the reputation both useful and disturbing. He never wanted to be known for destroying people, even people who deserved it. But he also understood that reputation was power, and power could be used to protect the people he cared about. The most surprising development had been his relationship with Timothy's teacher, Amanda Chun, a kindergarten educator who had worked with Timothy throughout the most difficult period of the divorce. She'd approached Derek with concerns about Timothy's behavior at school, leading to conversations that gradually evolved into a friendship that seemed to be heading toward something more. Amanda was everything Linda wasn't: direct, honest, genuinely nurturing toward children, and completely uninterested in Derek's financial situation or social status. She'd seen him at his most stressed and vulnerable, managing single parenthood while dealing with criminal proceedings, and had offered support without expecting anything in return. "Timothy talks about you constantly," Amanda had told Derek during their first coffee meeting outside school. "He's proud of his father in a way that shows real trust and security. That doesn't happen by accident." Derek found himself hoping that Timothy would have the chance to see what a healthy adult relationship looked like, something to counterbalance the dysfunction he'd witnessed between his parents. But he was also cautious about introducing new complications into Timothy's life while the boy was still processing the loss of his mother's daily presence. As Derek prepared for the final phase of legal proceedings, Linda and Bryce's criminal trials, he reflected on how completely their roles had reversed. Linda and Bryce had started their scheme believing Derek was a naive target who could be manipulated and discarded. Now, they were facing the consequences of underestimating someone whose training and temperament made him uniquely suited to long-term strategic thinking. Derek Rodriguez had never broken a promise to someone he cared about, and he'd never left a mission incomplete. Linda and Bryce's punishment was far from over. Chapter 7. The Final Judgment. 6 months after the wedding reception that changed everything, Derek sat in federal court watching Linda take the witness stand in her own defense. She looked different, thinner, older, with the kind of stress lines that came from months of legal pressure and public humiliation. Her expensive clothes had been replaced by a conservative suit that suggested poverty rather than success. The trial had been a masterclass in prosecutorial efficiency. The evidence against Linda was overwhelming, meticulously documented, and impossible to dispute. Phone records, financial transactions, surveillance footage, and her own recorded conversations created an irrefutable timeline of criminal conspiracy. Her defense attorney had tried to portray her as a victim of Bryce's manipulation, but the jury clearly wasn't buying the narrative. Derek watched as Linda attempted to explain her actions to 12 people who had heard weeks of evidence about her calculated betrayal of her husband and son. She claimed the affair was emotional desperation, the financial crimes were Bryce's idea, and the manipulation of Timothy was an attempt to protect him from his father's controlling behavior. Mrs. Rodriguez, the prosecutor asked during cross-examination, when you recorded conversations with your husband without his knowledge, what was your intention? I wanted evidence that he was psychologically abusive, Linda replied, her voice barely audible. Yet in hundreds of hours of recorded conversations, investigators found no evidence of abuse, threats, or controlling behavior. Instead, they found evidence of a concerned father asking appropriate questions about his child's welfare. Isn't that correct? Linda's silence spoke louder than any answer could have. Bryce's trial had concluded the previous month with a conviction on all charges. 23 counts of fraud, bribery, and endangering public safety had resulted in a sentence of 15 years in federal prison and restitution of $14.2 million. His assets had been seized, his business completely dismantled, and his reputation permanently destroyed. During his sentencing hearing, Bryce had attempted to blame Derek for his downfall, claiming his younger brother had orchestrated a vendetta that destroyed an innocent man's life. The judge had been unimpressed. Mr. Rodriguez, Judge Patricia Owens had said, your own communications and business records document years of criminal activity that had nothing to do with your brother's investigation. You built your empire on fraud and endangerment. The fact that your crimes were exposed during a family dispute doesn't make you a victim. It makes you unlucky. Derek had felt no satisfaction watching Bryce led away in shackles, only the grim completion of necessary justice. His brother had chosen betrayal over loyalty, crime over honest work, and personal gain over family bonds. The consequences were severe, but entirely predictable. Now, watching Linda face her own judgment, Derek experienced the same cold satisfaction. The woman who had shared his bed, raised his child, and planned his destruction was about to learn that actions had permanent consequences. Has the jury reached a verdict? Judge Owens asked. We have, Your Honor. Derek glanced at Timothy, who was staying with his grandfather during the trial proceedings. The boy was doing remarkably well considering the circumstances, but Derek knew the real healing would begin only after this chapter finally closed. On the charge of conspiracy to commit fraud, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of tax evasion, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of money laundering, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of child endangerment through psychological manipulation, how do you find? Guilty. Linda's legs buckled as the verdicts were read. Her attorney steadied her, but Derek could see that she was finally understanding the magnitude of her situation. She'd gambled everything on a scheme that required Derek to be weak, stupid, and helpless. Instead, she discovered what happened when someone with military intelligence training decided to wage total war. During the sentencing phase 2 weeks later, Derek was called to provide a victim impact statement. He thought carefully about what he wanted to say to the woman who had been his wife, the mother of his child, and the architect of their family's destruction. Your Honor, Derek began, looking directly at Linda, the defendant didn't just commit crimes against me. She committed crimes against our son. She used a 6-year-old child as a weapon in a scheme designed to destroy his father. She coached him to lie, to spy, and to carry adult secrets that no child should bear. That's not just criminal, it's evil. Linda was crying now, but Derek felt no sympathy for her tears. I served my country for 12 years, including combat deployments where I risked my life for people I'd never met. I came home to find that the person closest to me was willing to destroy our child's sense of security for financial gain. There's no punishment severe enough for that betrayal. Judge Owens sentenced Linda to 8 years in federal prison, with supervised probation for 5 additional years. She would serve her time at a minimum security facility designed for white-collar criminals, but 8 years was 8 years. Timothy would be 14 when his mother was released, old enough to make his own decisions about their relationship. As Linda was led away in handcuffs, she looked back at Derek one final time. He saw no remorse in her eyes, only resentment that her scheme had failed. Even facing prison, she couldn't accept responsibility for her choices. Dr. Martinez had been right about Linda's psychological profile. She would probably never genuinely understand why her actions were wrong. Outside the courthouse, Derek was approached by several reporters asking for his reaction to the verdicts. He prepared a brief statement that he hoped would close this chapter of his life permanently. Justice was served today for crimes that harmed not just me, but my son and our entire family. I hope this sends a message that betraying people who trust you carries serious consequences. My family will now focus on healing and moving forward. That evening, Derek picked up Timothy from his grandfather's house. They went to dinner at their favorite restaurant, where Timothy asked the question Derek had been expecting. "Daddy, will I ever see Mommy again?" "Yes, buddy. When you're older, if you want to see her, we'll make that happen. But she has to serve her punishment first, and you have to understand that she made choices that hurt our family." "I know," Timothy said with the serious tone he developed over the past months. "I'm not mad at her, but I don't miss her like I thought I would." The admission broke Derek's heart and relieved him simultaneously. Timothy was processing the loss of his mother with remarkable maturity, but Derek knew there would be difficult moments ahead as the boy grew older and understood more about what had happened. "That's okay," Derek assured him. "You're allowed to feel however you feel about this situation. There's no right or wrong way to handle it." As they drove home through their quiet suburban neighborhood, Derek reflected on how completely his life had changed in less than a year. He'd lost a wife and brother, but gained clarity about what really mattered. Timothy was thriving. His business was more successful than ever, and he was building a relationship with Amanda that felt genuine and healthy. Derek Rodriguez had learned that betrayal revealed character, both in the people who committed it and in those who responded to it. Linda and Bryce had shown who they really were when they thought they held all the power. Derek had shown who he was when that power was stripped away and redistributed. The war was over. Derek had won completely, permanently, and without compromise. But more importantly, Timothy was safe, and their future together was secure. Everything else was just the price his enemies had paid for underestimating the wrong man. Chapter 8: The Reckoning. 1 year after the wedding that exposed everything, Derek stood in his new home's kitchen, preparing breakfast for Timothy and Amanda Chun, who had gradually become a regular part of their Sunday morning routine. The house was smaller than the one he'd shared with Linda, but felt more like home than anywhere he'd lived since childhood. Timothy, now 7, was building an elaborate fort out of couch cushions while explaining to Amanda's 4-year-old daughter, Sophie, the proper engineering principles for structural stability. Watching his son mentor a younger child with patience and enthusiasm, Derek felt the satisfaction of seeing Timothy's natural leadership qualities emerge despite the trauma he'd experienced. Amanda appeared in the kitchen doorway, her dark hair still tousled from sleep, wearing one of Derek's old Marine Corps t-shirts. Their relationship had developed slowly, carefully, with both of them prioritizing the children's adjustment over their own romantic impulses. But after months of friendship that gradually deepened into love, they'd begun discussing the possibility of combining their families permanently. "Any word from your lawyer about the appeal?" Amanda asked, accepting the coffee Derek offered. "Denied," Derek replied with satisfaction. "Linda's sentence stands, and she's exhausted her legal options. Bryce's appeal was denied last month. They're both exactly where they belong." The past year had brought a series of final victories in Derek's methodical destruction of his betrayers. Linda had attempted to appeal her conviction on grounds of inadequate legal representation, claiming her attorney hadn't adequately prepared her defense. The appellate court had reviewed the case and concluded that no amount of preparation could have overcome the overwhelming evidence of her guilt. Bryce's situation was even more devastating. His attempt to appeal his sentence had backfired when investigators discovered additional evidence of fraud during the appellate review process. Instead of reducing his sentence, the court had added 3 more years for previously undetected crimes. He would now serve 18 years in federal prison, ensuring he'd be nearly 60 when released. But the legal victories were only part of Derek's comprehensive destruction of his enemies. The social and financial consequences had been equally thorough. Linda's parents, who had initially supported her during the early stages of the divorce, had completely severed contact after learning the full extent of her crimes. Her manipulation of Timothy had particularly enraged her mother, who had previously doted on her only grandchild. The psychological evaluation that documented Linda's systematic abuse of Timothy had convinced even her most loyal supporters that she was beyond redemption. Bryce's wife had divorced him immediately after his conviction, taking their 2 children and moving across the country to escape the scandal. She'd reverted to her maiden name and obtained a restraining order preventing Bryce from contacting their children until they reached adulthood. His own parents had effectively disowned him, removing him from family wills and trusts. The professional consequences had been equally devastating. Both Linda and Bryce were prohibited from working in their respective fields due to their felony convictions. Linda's marketing consultancy had been permanently shut down, with clients receiving restitution from seized assets. Bryce's construction company had been dissolved, with all assets sold to pay restitution to victims. Derek had ensured that their crimes became public knowledge through strategic media engagement. He'd cooperated with journalists investigating construction fraud and divorce scheme cases, providing background information that resulted in multiple news stories about the dangers of trusted individuals committing sophisticated financial crimes. Rodriguez's case highlights need for due diligence in personal and professional relationships. One prominent business magazine had headlined, featuring Derek's photo alongside statistics about domestic fraud. The article had significantly raised Derek's profile in the security consulting industry, while ensuring that Linda and Bryce's names would forever be associated with betrayal and criminality. More satisfying than the public humiliation was the knowledge that Derek had protected other potential victims. The investigation into Bryce's construction fraud had led to industry-wide reforms in building safety inspections and contractor oversight. Several other developers had been caught using similar schemes, preventing potential structural failures that could have resulted in injuries or deaths. Timothy had thrived during his first year of life without his mother's toxic influence. His anxiety had disappeared, his grades had improved, and his relationship with Derek had deepened into the kind of father-son bond Derek had always hoped for. The boy no longer carried the weight of adult secrets or worried about betraying confidences. "Dad," Timothy said, emerging from his fort construction project, "Sophie wants to know if her mommy can live with us forever." Derek glanced at Amanda, who blushed but smiled encouragingly. They discussed marriage several times, but both wanted to ensure the children were completely comfortable with the idea before making it official. "What do you think about that idea?" Derek asked Timothy. "I think it would be good," Timothy replied with characteristic seriousness. "Sophie needs a daddy, and I like having a sister. And Amanda makes you smile more than you used to." The observation was both touching and accurate. Derek hadn't realized how rarely he'd smiled during the final years of his marriage to Linda until Amanda pointed out how different he seemed when relaxed and genuinely happy. "Well then," Derek said, pulling a small velvet box from his jacket pocket, "maybe we should make it official." Amanda's gasp drew Timothy and Sophie's attention, and soon all 4 of them were clustered around the kitchen island as Derek formally proposed to the woman who had helped him rebuild his life and heal his son's wounded heart. "Will you marry me?" Derek asked, offering the simple but elegant ring he'd chosen with Timothy's input. "Yes," Amanda replied, tears streaming down her face. "Absolutely yes." As Derek slipped the ring onto Amanda's finger, he felt a completeness he'd never experienced during his first marriage. Linda had been a performance, a carefully constructed illusion of compatibility that had hidden fundamental incompatibilities. Amanda was genuine partnership, shared values, complementary strengths, and mutual respect that made them stronger together than either could be alone. The engagement celebration was interrupted by Derek's phone buzzing with a text from his father. "Bryce tried to call me collect from prison. I declined the charges." Some people never learn. Derek showed the message to Amanda, who shook her head in amazement. After everything that's happened, he still thinks he can manipulate family relationships? "Bryce has never accepted responsibility for his choices," Derek explained. "He probably thinks enough time has passed that family loyalty should override justice." He's wrong. Derek had received several indirect attempts at reconciliation from both Linda and Bryce over the past year. Linda had asked mutual friends to suggest that Derek consider allowing unsupervised visitation with Timothy. Bryce had attempted to reach out through their father, claiming he'd found religion in prison and wanted to make amends. Derek had rejected all overtures without consideration. His position was simple. Betrayal of family was unforgivable, and attempts to manipulate children for adult purposes were irredeemable. Neither Linda nor Bryce had shown genuine remorse for their actions, only regret that their schemes had failed. "Will you ever forgive them?" Amanda asked, reading Derek's thoughts. "No," Derek replied without hesitation. "Forgiveness implies they deserve another chance to hurt the people I care about. They don't." Amanda nodded approvingly. She'd seen the psychological evaluation reports documenting Linda's manipulation of Timothy and understood that some actions were too harmful to excuse or forget. That afternoon, as Derek and Amanda began planning their wedding while the children played in the backyard, Derek reflected on how completely his life had been transformed by his enemy's betrayal. If Linda and Bryce hadn't overplayed their hand, he might have remained trapped in a dysfunctional marriage while they slowly destroyed him through smaller, more subtle deceptions. Their greed and arrogance had forced a confrontation that revealed everyone's true character. Derek had proven himself capable of protecting what mattered most. Linda and Bryce had proven themselves unworthy of trust or mercy. And Timothy had proven himself resilient enough to thrive despite witnessing the worst aspects of adult behavior. Derek Rodriguez had entered the war against his family reluctantly, but had prosecuted it with the thoroughness and brutality his enemies deserved. The victory was complete, permanent, and irreversible. His betrayers would spend years paying for their crimes while Derek built a new life based on honesty, respect, and genuine love. Justice had been served. The mission was complete. Chapter 9. The Price of War. 5 years had passed since the wedding reception that changed everything. Derek Rodriguez stood in his backyard, watching his 12-year-old son Timothy coach Sophie through proper batting stance while their younger brother Michael, now 3, attempted to catch butterflies in the outfield. The scene represented everything Derek had fought to protect and build, a family based on trust, loyalty, and genuine affection. Amanda emerged from the house carrying a pitcher of lemonade, her pregnancy with their second child together showing prominently beneath her summer dress. They'd married 18 months after the destruction of Linda and Bryce's conspiracy, building their relationship on the foundation of shared values and complementary strengths that Derek had never experienced in his first marriage. "Any word from your attorney about Linda's release?" Amanda asked, settling into the patio chair beside Derek. "She's out," Derek replied matter-of-factly. "Released yesterday after serving her full sentence. No early release for good behavior. Apparently she had several incidents with other inmates and staff." Linda had served all 8 years of her federal sentence at the Federal Correctional Institution in Dublin, California. According to Derek's contacts within the federal prison system, she'd proven to be a difficult inmate who blamed others for her situation and refused to participate in rehabilitation programs. Multiple disciplinary infractions had eliminated any possibility of early release. "Has she attempted contact?" Amanda asked, knowing the answer but needing to hear it confirmed. 3 letters sent to my business address, all returned unopened. 2 attempts to reach Timothy through his school, both reported to authorities as violations of the restraining order. She's testing boundaries to see what she can get away with. Derek had anticipated Linda's release and prepared accordingly. The restraining order remained in effect until Timothy reached 18, and Derek had ensured that all institutions in Timothy's life, school, sports teams, medical providers, had been notified of Linda's release and legal restrictions. Timothy had been informed of his mother's impending release and had reacted with the emotional maturity Derek had come to expect from his eldest son. At 12, Timothy understood the situation's complexities better than many adults would have. "I don't really remember her anymore," Timothy had told Derek during one of their regular father-son conversations. "I mean, I remember some things, but it's like remembering a movie I saw a long time ago. Amanda is my mom now." The statement had been both heartbreaking and encouraging. Linda's 8-year absence during Timothy's most formative years had effectively erased her emotional significance in his life. Amanda had become his primary maternal figure, and their bond was based on daily care, consistent presence, and genuine affection rather than biological connection. Bryce remained in federal prison and would for another decade. His attempt to manipulate their father into reconciliation had failed completely, and his own children had been raised to understand that their father was a criminal who had chosen betrayal over family loyalty. They'd thrived under their mother's care and had no interest in reconnecting with Bryce when he was eventually released. Derek's business had grown exponentially during the 5 years since his enemy's downfall. His reputation for thoroughness and discretion had attracted high-profile clients from Fortune 500 companies to foreign governments seeking security consulting services. The Rodriguez Security Group now employed 43 people and maintained offices in 6 cities. The irony wasn't lost on Derek that his systematic destruction of Linda and Bryce had become the foundation of his professional success. Corporate executives understood that someone capable of dismantling his own family's conspiracies with such precision could certainly protect their interests from external threats. "There's something else," Derek told Amanda, pulling a legal document from his jacket. "Timothy has officially filed to have his name legally changed." Amanda looked surprised. "To what?" "Timothy Rodriguez, John. He wants to honor both families, but make it clear that you're his real mother now." The gesture represented Timothy's complete emotional separation from Linda. He'd chosen to legally acknowledge Amanda as his maternal figure while maintaining connection to Derek's family heritage. It was a mature decision that demonstrated Timothy's understanding of family as something built through choice and commitment rather than mere biology. Derek had been prouder of Timothy in that moment than any other in the boy's 12 years. His son had learned the most important lesson Derek could teach. Loyalty was earned through consistent action, not demanded through blood relation. The doorbell rang, interrupting Derek's reflections. Through the front window, he could see a woman who looked vaguely familiar but significantly aged. It took him a moment to recognize Linda's mother, Patricia, whom he hadn't seen since before the trial. Derek answered the door cautiously, noting how much Patricia had aged in 5 years. The stress of her daughter's criminal conviction and imprisonment had clearly taken a significant toll. "Hello, Derek," Patricia said nervously. "I know this is unexpected, but I was hoping we could talk." "About what?" Derek asked, not inviting her inside. "About Linda and Timothy. She's been released, and she's struggling. I thought maybe, for Timothy's sake, there might be some way to arrange supervised visits or—" "No," Derek interrupted. "Timothy has made his own decision about Linda. He's legally changed his name to remove any connection to her. There will be no visits, supervised or otherwise." Patricia's face crumpled. "Derek, she's still his mother. She served her time, paid her debt to society. Surely some mercy." "Patricia," Derek said, his voice carrying the authority that had commanded Marines in combat, "Linda didn't just commit crimes against me. She psychologically abused Timothy, used him as a weapon, and tried to destroy his relationship with his father. There's no debt of time that can repay that damage. But family is what you build through loyalty and sacrifice," Derek continued. "Linda chose to destroy our family for personal gain. That choice has permanent consequences. Timothy has a mother now, Amanda, who earned that role through love and consistency. Linda forfeited her claim to motherhood when she chose to harm her own child." Patricia began crying, but Derek felt no sympathy for her tears. She'd raised Linda, probably instilling the sense of entitlement and manipulation that had led to the conspiracy against Derek's family. The apple, as the saying went, didn't fall far from the tree. "Please," Patricia begged. "Just one meeting. Let her see what a fine young man he's become." "Timothy has seen what Linda is capable of," Derek replied. "He made his choice based on that knowledge. I won't override his decision to protect his emotional well-being for the convenience of someone who forfeited the right to be his mother." Derek closed the door firmly, ending the conversation. Through the window, he watched Patricia walk slowly back to her car, shoulders shaking with sobs. He felt no guilt about his refusal, only satisfaction that Timothy would never have to face the manipulation and emotional blackmail that Patricia's visit represented. When Derek returned to the backyard, Amanda looked up questioningly. "Linda's mother," Derek explained, "tried to arrange some kind of reconciliation. I told her Timothy had made his own choice and we would respect it." Amanda nodded approvingly. "Good. That woman helped create the monster Linda became. Timothy doesn't need that poison in his life." As the sun set over their suburban paradise, Derek reflected on the completeness of his victory over the people who had tried to destroy him. Linda was free but isolated, facing a world that had moved on without her. Bryce remained imprisoned, forgotten by everyone except the victims seeking restitution. Timothy had grown into a confident, caring young man who understood the difference between family by birth and family by choice. Derek Rodriguez had proven that betrayal carried permanent consequences, that some actions were unforgivable, and that loyalty was the foundation of any relationship worth preserving. His enemies had learned too late that underestimating a man trained in warfare was a fatal mistake. The war was over. Derek had won completely, and his victory would last generations. His children would grow up understanding that trust was precious, that betrayal was costly, and that family was something you built through daily choices rather than inherited through blood. Justice had been served. The mission remained complete, and Derek Rodriguez would never, ever forgive the people who had tried to destroy everything he held sacred. Some wounds were meant to stay open, serving as permanent reminders of the price of betrayal. Linda and Bryce would carry those wounds for the rest of their lives, while Derek built something beautiful on the ruins of their schemes. That was victory. That was justice. That was the only ending Derek's enemies deserved. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. Chapter 1. The Whisper. Jacob Hutchins had built his life on certainty. At 52, he owned Hutchins Construction, a company his father started in a garage 40 years ago that now employed 63 people across 3 counties. His hands, calloused and strong, had framed houses, poured foundations, and shaken on deals worth millions. Those same hands now gripped a shopping cart in Henderson's Market, trembling for the first time in decades. "Jacob? Oh, Jacob, I'm so sorry." Rachel Dunbar had appeared beside him in the cereal aisle, her face painted with exaggerated sympathy. She was Joyce's friend from book club, always dressed like she was attending a funeral, black cardigan, pearl necklace, that particular expression of pity that made his skin crawl. "Sorry about what?" Jacob asked, reaching for his usual brand of coffee. Rachel's eyes widened. She touched his arm gently, like he might shatter. "About your condition. Sherry told Joyce, and Joyce told all of us. We're just heartbroken. You're so young for Alzheimer's." She lowered her voice to a whisper. "But I want you to know, we're all here for you and Joyce. Whatever you both need." The coffee can slip from Jacob's hand, hitting the linoleum with a hollow thud that echoed through the aisle. "What did you say?" "Oh dear." Rachel picked up the can, her movements overly careful, as if demonstrating patience for a confused child. "It's okay to forget things. That's why Sherry's been so worried. She told everyone at the neighborhood watch meeting last week. We all think she's so brave, taking care of her father like this." The fluorescent lights above seemed too bright. Jacob's daughter 28-year-old Sherry, had been living with them for 6 months since her temporary setback. That's what she called losing her marketing job in the city. His daughter, telling people he had Alzheimer's disease. "I don't have Alzheimer's," Jacob said slowly, clearly. "There's nothing wrong with my memory." Rachel's expression shifted to something worse than pity, disbelief mixed with concern. "Of course, dear." Joyce mentioned the denial phase. "It's perfectly normal." She patted his shoulder. "You should probably finish your shopping. Do you need help finding your way home?" Jacob left his cart in the middle of the aisle and walked out. In his truck, he sat gripping the steering wheel, his reflection in the rearview mirror showing a face he barely recognized. Not from disease, but from shock. His eyes were clear. His mind was sharp. He could remember every detail. His social security number, his first job at 14, the exact profit margins from last quarter, Joyce's birthday, their anniversary, the day Sherry was born at 3:47 a.m. on a snowy February morning. He didn't have Alzheimer's, but his daughter was telling everyone he did. Why? The answer came to him as he drove home, pieces clicking together with terrible clarity. 3 months ago, Sherry had suggested he slow down, maybe retire early. 2 months ago, she'd asked detailed questions about his estate planning, about the business succession plan. Last month, she'd introduced her new boyfriend, Mitchell Christian, a smooth-talking investment consultant who'd immediately started talking about protecting assets and future planning. And just last week, Sherry had asked him to sign some papers, just updates to the business insurance, she'd said. He'd been in the middle of a conference call and had waved her off. She'd seemed irritated. Jacob pulled into his driveway in the quiet neighborhood where he'd lived for 23 years. The 2-story colonial he'd built with his own crew. The lawn he mowed every Saturday. The basketball hoop where he taught Sherry to shoot free throws. His daughter was trying to destroy him. Chapter 2. The Neighborhood Canvas. Jacob didn't go inside. Instead, he sat in his truck for 20 minutes, forcing his breathing to steady, his mind to sharpen. Panic wouldn't help. Anger wouldn't help. He needed information. At 4:30 p.m., he started walking the neighborhood. Stan Lake lived 3 houses down, a retired police sergeant who'd moved in 5 years ago. They had a standing agreement. Jacob plowed Stan's driveway in winter. Stan kept an eye on the neighborhood. Stan was in his garage, organizing fishing gear, when Jacob approached. "Jacob," Stan's smile was genuine but guarded. "How are you holding up?" "That depends," Jacob said. "What have you heard?" Stan set down a tackle box. "Your daughter stopped by last Tuesday. Said you've been having episodes. Wandering at night, forgetting where you were. She asked me to call her if I saw you out alone after dark. Said it was for your safety." He paused. "I'm sorry, man. That's a rough diagnosis." "I don't have Alzheimer's, Stan. I've never wandered anywhere." "What else did she say?" Stan's expression hardened. 25 years on the force had taught him to spot a con. "She cried. Said you wouldn't accept treatment, that Joyce was in denial. She asked if I'd testify to your erratic behavior if it came to that. Said it might be necessary for your own protection." "Testify?" Jacob's jaw clenched. "Legal proceedings? Conservatorship? Maybe?" She didn't say explicitly. Stan crossed his arms. "Jacob, level with me. What's going on?" "That's what I'm trying to find out." He hit 4 more houses before sunset. The story was consistent, calculated, and devastating. Eunice Wagner, the elderly widow next door, had been told Jacob had aggressive outbursts and might be dangerous. She'd started locking her doors during the day for the first time in 40 years. Perry Brock, 2 streets over, said Sherry had mentioned Jacob's declining business decisions and hinted the company might be in financial trouble due to his impaired judgment. Yvonne Maxwell, who ran the neighborhood watch, revealed Sherry had been attending meetings for 3 months, carefully building a narrative. Her father's memory lapses, his confusion about dates, his paranoid accusations against family members, all classic symptoms. By the time Jacob returned home, the streetlights were flickering on. Through the kitchen window, he could see Joyce preparing dinner, Sherry setting the table, both moving in domestic harmony. It looked perfect. It looked like a lie. He found his wife in the kitchen. Joyce turned when he entered, her familiar smile warm but strained. 50 years old, still beautiful, still the woman he'd married 29 years ago. But there was something in her eyes now. Worry, maybe guilt. "You're home late," Joyce said. Sherry made pot roast. "Joyce, do you think I have Alzheimer's?" The wooden spoon in her hand clattered into the sink. "What? No. Jacob, what are you?" "Because apparently everyone else in the neighborhood does. Rachel Dunbar offered to help me find my way home from the grocery store. Stan Lake is prepared to testify about my erratic behavior. Our neighbors are locking their doors because Sherry told them I'm dangerous." Joyce's face drained of color. "That's not. She wouldn't. Wouldn't she?" Jacob's voice was quiet, controlled. "What did she start talking to you about my memory? About me forgetting things?" Joyce sank into a chair. "6 weeks ago. She said you'd forgotten a meeting. Then she mentioned you'd asked her the same question twice. Little things. I told her everyone forgets sometimes, but she seemed so concerned." Her voice trailed off. "Oh God, Jacob, what is she doing?" Before he could answer, Sherry walked in, Mitchell Christian behind her. His daughter looked fresh, innocent in jeans and a sweater, her auburn hair pulled back. Mitchell wore an expensive suit, his smile practiced and empty. "Dad, you're home." Sherry moved to hug him, but Jacob stepped back. "I ran into Rachel Dunbar today." Sherry's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. "Oh, how is she?" "Very sympathetic about my Alzheimer's. The disease I don't have." The kitchen went silent. Mitchell's hand moved to Sherry's shoulder, a possessive gesture. "Mr. Hutchins, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "Don't." Jacob's voice cut like a blade. "I've talked to the neighbors. All of them. I know exactly what's been said and by whom." Sherry's face crumpled. Tears came instantly, perfectly timed. "Daddy, I'm so sorry. I've been so scared for you. The forgetfulness, the mood swings. I just wanted to make sure people were watching out for you. I didn't mean to upset you, but you won't go see a doctor, and Mom won't make you, and I'm terrified of losing you." "Stop," Joyce said quietly. "Just stop, Sherry." The tears dried up faster than they'd appeared. For a moment, Jacob saw his daughter's real face, calculating, cold, cornered. "We need to talk," Jacob said. "The three of us." "Mitchell, you can leave." "I think I should stay," Mitchell said smoothly. "As Sherry's partner, and as someone concerned about this family's well-being. Get out." Something in Jacob's tone made Mitchell reconsider. He squeezed Sherry's shoulder once, whispered something in her ear, and left for the front door. Jacob sat at the kitchen table, gestured for his wife and daughter to sit. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me why. All of it. And then we're going to figure out what happens next." Sherry looked at her mother, then at her father. The mask had fallen completely now. She sat, folded her hands, and smiled, a different smile than before. "Sharper. You really want to know, Dad? Fine. You're sitting on a gold mine and wasting it. Hutchins Construction could be worth millions if properly managed. But you insist on staying small, on keeping the personal touch, on turning down expansion opportunities because you want to know every worker by name. It's pathetic." Joyce gasped. Jacob didn't move. "Mitchell has investors ready. Real money. But they won't deal with you. You're too old-fashioned, too stubborn. So yes, I've been laying groundwork. Establishing that you're not competent to make business decisions. With the right medical evaluation, the right testimonies, I could get conservatorship. Then Mitchell and I could finally unlock this company's real potential." "And me?" Jacob asked quietly. "What happens to me in this plan?" Sherry shrugged. "A nice facility. The best care. You'd be comfortable. You were going to have me committed. It wasn't a question. I was going to help you retire," Sherry corrected, "and save a business you're running into the ground through sheer stubbornness." Jacob studied his daughter. When had she become this? Had she always been this, hidden behind Daddy's little girl smiles and Sunday dinners? "Get out," he said finally. "Pack your things. You have 1 hour. You can't kick me out. This is my childhood home. It's my house. You're an adult. You have 1 hour, or I call Stan Lake and have you removed for trespassing." Sherry stood, her face twisted with rage. "You think you've won? I have 3 months of documentation. Witness statements. You think people will believe you over everyone I've convinced? You're finished, old man. With or without you, Mitchell and I are taking that company." She stormed upstairs. Joyce was crying silently. Jacob reached across the table and took his wife's hand. "Did you know?" he asked. "No. I swear, Jacob. I thought." She seemed so concerned. "I thought maybe you were forgetting things, and I just hadn't noticed. I thought I was being a bad wife for not seeing it." Joyce squeezed his hand. "What are we going to do?" Jacob looked up at the ceiling, hearing Sherry's footsteps above, slamming drawers, making her point with every noise. "I'm going to destroy her," he said quietly. "Her and Mitchell both. They want to play games with my mind, my business, my life. Fine, let's play." Chapter 3. The Counterattack Blueprint. After Sherry left, slamming the door at 11:47 p.m. with 2 suitcases and a final venomous glare, Jacob sat in his study and made lists. Not emotional lists, not angry lists. Strategic ones. First, what they had on him. 3 months of carefully planted stories. Neighbors who'd been manipulated into believing they'd witnessed signs of decline. Maybe forged documentation. He bet Mitchell had access to medical letterhead, psych evaluation forms. Sherry had always been good at details, at planning. She got that from him. Second, what he knew. The truth. But truth was subjective when enough people believed the lie. Stan Lake believed him, but Stan was just one voice. Jacob needed more. Third, what he could do about it. This was where it got interesting. At 6 a.m., Jacob was at the office before any of his crew arrived. Hutchins Construction operated from a converted warehouse, half office space, half equipment storage. He bought the building outright 15 years ago. The deed was in his name alone. He called his lawyer, Andre Evans, who'd handled the business legal work for a decade. "Jacob, it's 6 in the morning. I need you to do 3 things today. First, full medical workup. Complete cognitive eval, the works. I want documentation from real doctors that I'm sound of mind. Second, I need you to review every piece of paper I've signed in the last 6 months. Third, I need to know what it would take to make my business untouchable, trusts, protections, whatever it takes to ensure no one can claim it without my explicit, verified consent." Silence on the other end. Then, "What's going on?" Jacob told him everything. When he finished, Andre whistled low. "That's attempted fraud. Possibly elder abuse, even at your age. We could prosecute." "Not yet. I need to know what I'm protecting first, and I need to know what they've already done. Can you trace Mitchell Christian? Find out who he really is. I'll have a background check by end of day." The medical evaluation took 3 hours. Dr. Raymond Schneider and urologist Andre recommended put Jacob through cognitive tests, memory assessments, brain scans. At the end, Dr. Schneider's report was clear. Patient shows no signs of cognitive decline, dementia, or Alzheimer's disease. Mental acuity is above average for age demographic. Jacob had the report notarized and filed with Andre's office by noon. The background check on Mitchell Christian came back at 4 p.m. Jacob read it in his office, his anger crystallizing into something cold and focused. Mitchell Christian, born Mitchell Christian Burke, had changed his name 7 years ago after being involved in a real estate fraud scheme in Nevada. Charges were dropped due to lack of evidence, but the pattern was clear. He identified targets with assets, cultivated relationships, and convinced them to make poor financial decisions. 2 elderly victims had lost their homes. One had died in a state facility. He'd found Sherry 6 months ago at a networking event in the city. According to social media traces Andre's investigator had found, their relationship had started immediately, right before Sherry had conveniently lost her job and moved back home. It wasn't just greed, it was a con, and his daughter was either a willing participant or a victim herself. Jacob wasn't sure which was worse. That evening, he met with Stan Lake, Perry Brock, and 3 other neighbors at Perry's house. He brought them medical reports, printed copies of Mitchell's background check, and a simple request. "I need you to listen," Jacob said, "and I need you to trust what you've known about me for years versus what you've been told for 3 months. He laid it out methodically. The lies, the pattern, the motive. Stan was convinced immediately. Cop instincts. Perry took longer, but came around when he saw Mitchell's background. Yvonne Maxwell, who'd hosted Sherry at Neighborhood Watch, looked sick. "She cried at our meeting," Yvonne said. Real tears. She talked about her father slipping away. How could I have been so stupid? You weren't stupid, Jacob said. You were kind. She used that. What do you need from us? Stan asked. Statements. Written accounts of what Sherry told you. Dates and times if you remember them. And I need you to start questioning it publicly. Tell people you talk to me that you're not sure the story holds up. Plant seeds of doubt. You're not going to confront her directly? Perry asked. Jacob smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. Oh, I am. But not yet. First, I'm going to let her think she's winning. Over the next week, Jacob executed phase 1. He started forgetting things. Small things at first. He'd ask Joyce what day it was when she just told him. He'd leave cabinet doors open, tools in wrong places. At the construction office, he'd ask his foreman, Angelo Morton, about schedules he'd already discussed. Angelo, who'd known Jacob for 20 years, caught on after the second incident. Boss, what the hell are you doing? Jacob told him. Angelo's expression went from confused to furious to grimly satisfied. You're setting a trap. I'm laying foundation, Jacob corrected. I need her confident. I need Mitchell confident. People make mistakes when they think they've already won. He also hired a private investigator, a woman named Kelly Clay, who specialized in fraud cases. Her job, follow Sherry and Mitchell, document everything, find out exactly what their plan was. The reports came back detailed and damning. Mitchell was meeting with investors, shady ones with histories of hostile takeovers and asset stripping. The plan wasn't to run Hutchins Construction better. It was to liquidate it. Sell the equipment, the contracts, the property, everything. Take the money and disappear. Sherry was in on every meeting. Kelly provided photos. Sherry and Mitchell at a restaurant with 2 men in expensive suits. Papers spread across the table. Sherry and Mitchell at a bank, leaving with a safety deposit box key. Sherry and Mitchell apartment hunting in Miami, looking at penthouses neither of them could afford. Yet. But the most interesting discovery came from Kelly's deep dive into their communications. She'd managed to access Mitchell's email through methods Jacob didn't ask about. They had a timeline. Get conservatorship established within 8 weeks. Transfer business assets to a shell corporation Mitchell controlled. Liquidate within 3 months. By New Year's, it was now late October. Jacob had time, but not much. He called a meeting with Andre, Kelly, Angelo, and Stan. In his study, with Joyce present, he laid out the plan. They want to play the long game? Fine. I'm going to play it better. Here's how this ends. Sherry and Mitchell don't just lose. They face consequences. Real ones. Legal ones. You want to prosecute? Andre asked. I want them to confess to attempted fraud in front of witnesses in a way that can't be disputed. I want them to incriminate themselves so thoroughly that there's no way out. Ow! Stan asked. Jacob pulled out a blueprint, literally a construction blueprint, but modified. He'd drawn a timeline, a strategy, a trap. Mitchell thinks he's running a con. Sherry thinks she's smarter than her old man. They're about to learn they're both wrong. He pointed to the timeline. 2 weeks from now, I'm going to have a breakthrough episode. Something public, something that makes their case stronger. Then I'm going to do something that will make Mitchell and Sherry move up their timeline. Make them desperate. What? Joyce asked. Jacob smiled. I'm going to sign over my company. To someone they don't know about. Chapter 4. The Explosion. The episode happened at the Riverside Diner on a busy Saturday morning, 2 weeks into November. Jacob had chosen the location carefully. Public, full of witnesses, people who knew him. He arrived at 8 a.m. with Joyce, ordered his usual breakfast. Stan Lake was 3 booths over, positioned to watch. Angelo sat at the counter, both ready for the performance. At 8:23 a.m., Jacob stood up in the middle of the diner and started yelling. Where is it? Where's my wallet? Someone stole my wallet. Joyce reached for his arm. Jacob, honey, it's right there. In your jacket. Jacob pulled away. Don't lie to me. I know what He stopped, looked around at the staring faces, then down at his jacket. Slowly, he reached into the pocket and pulled out his wallet. The confusion on his face was perfect, practiced in the mirror at home. I thought. He sat down heavily. Joyce held his hand, and he could see real tears in her eyes. She knew this was an act, but the emotion was real. This was what it would look like if he really was losing his mind. Around them, the diner hummed with whispers. By noon, half the town knew Jacob Hutchins had had a public breakdown. By 2 p.m., Sherry called. Jacob, let it go to voicemail. Dad, I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. I know we fought, but I'm still your daughter. Please, let me help. Call me back. He didn't, but he knew she'd heard exactly what he wanted her to hear. The trap was baited. That night, Jacob executed phase 2. He met with Andre at the law office after hours. With them was a man named Lorenzo Berry, 55, a construction foreman who'd worked for Jacob for 18 years. Lorenzo was more than an employee. He was family. His kids called Jacob Uncle Jake. You're sure about this? Lorenzo asked, reading the document Andre had prepared. Completely. On paper, you're now the owner of Hutchins Construction. Transferred for $1 and other considerations. Legitimate, legal, notarized. But not real, Lorenzo said. Real enough that it'll show up in any record search. There's a clause buried in page 8 that nullifies the transfer under specific conditions. Conditions I control. But Sherry won't read that far. She'll see the surface transfer and panic. Andre slid the papers across the desk. This is some next-level strategy. Jacob, you're essentially creating a decoy target. Mitchell wants my company. I'm giving him one that doesn't exist anymore on paper. When he makes his move, he'll be trying to steal something I don't own. That's fraud with evidence. They signed. Andre filed the paperwork with the county that night, made sure it would be publicly searchable by Monday morning. Jacob went home, where Joyce was waiting. Did it work? The diner thing? Perfectly. Half the town saw me lose it. The other half heard about it. Joyce sat beside him on the couch. I hate this. I hate that our daughter turned into someone who'd do this. She made her choices. Jacob's voice was harder than he intended. He softened it. I know you want to believe she's being manipulated by Mitchell. Maybe she was at first. But those emails Kelly found? Sherry wrote some of them. She's been planning this, active participant. Whatever she was, whoever we raised, that person's gone. Joyce was quiet for a long time. When this is over, we lost her anyway, didn't you? We lost her when she decided I was worth more as an incompetent meal ticket than as her father. Monday morning, Kelly called. They took the bait. Mitchell ran a property search this morning, found the transfer. I'm watching him right now through long-range camera. He's on the phone, pacing, looks pissed. Good. Keep watching. Sherry called that afternoon. Jacob answered this time. Dad, we need to talk. I know things have been rough, but family is family. Can I come over tonight? Why now, Sherry? A pause. Because I was wrong. About everything. I want to apologize. Please. Jacob almost believed her. The desperation in her voice was real enough. But he knew what had changed. The company was no longer in his name. Their timeline was destroyed. Come at 7, he said. Just you. She arrived at 6:53, punctual as always. She looked tired, less polished. Jacob let her in, and they sat in the living room. Joyce excused herself. They'd agreed she shouldn't be there for this part. I'm sorry, Dad. Sherry's eyes were red. I'll let Mitchell convince me that you weren't capable, that I needed to take control for your own good. But after what happened at the diner, I realized I was wrong. You need help, real help, and I should have been supporting you instead of trying to take over. Jacob let the silence stretch. She was good. If he didn't know better, he'd believe every word. You transferred the company, Sherry said finally, to Lorenzo Berry. How did you know that? I've been keeping track, making sure you weren't making bad decisions. I saw the filing. She leaned forward. Dad, Lorenzo's a good man, but he doesn't know how to run a business. He can't handle the paperwork, the contracts, the liability. You made that transfer when you weren't thinking clearly. Let me help you undo it, for your sake and for the workers. Why do you care about the company, Sherry? You said I was running it into the ground. She flinched. I was angry. I said things I didn't mean. Or you meant every word. And now you're panicking because the asset you wanted to steal is no longer accessible. Sherry's mask cracked. I'm trying to help you. You're trying to save your con. Mitchell's investors are getting impatient, aren't they? Your timeline's broken. You can't get conservatorship over me if I don't. She stood. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Jacob remained seated, calm. Here's what I know. You and Mitchell Christian, born Mitchell Christian Burke, by the way, check his record, have been planning to have me declared incompetent, seize my business, liquidate it, and disappear with the money. You spent 3 months spreading lies, manipulating neighbors, building a false narrative. The diner incident? That was me, Sherry. Acting. Giving you exactly what you wanted to see, so you'd get sloppy. Sherry's face went white. You're paranoid. You're sick. I have medical documentation from last week proving I'm completely sound. I have witness statements from everyone you lied to. I have your emails, your bank records, your apartment searches in Miami. I have everything. She sank back into the chair. For a long moment, she didn't speak. What do you want? She finally asked. I want you to understand that you lost. Completely. You can't prove anything. Those emails are private. Illegally obtained, yes. Can't use them in court. But I don't need to. Want to know why? Sherry's eyes narrowed. Jacob smiled. Because you're going to confess. On record. In front of witnesses. And you're going to do it willingly. You're insane. No, I'm strategic. See, Mitchell doesn't know the transfer to Lorenzo has a nullification clause. He doesn't know I can reverse it with a single signature. He thinks the company is actually Lorenzo's now. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell Mitchell that I'm willing to meet with both of you, that I'm confused and might be open to undoing the transfer if approached right. You're going to set up a meeting for tomorrow night. And at that meeting, in front of witnesses with recording equipment, you're both going to try to convince me to sign over my company. Why will we do that? Because Mitchell's desperate. His investors are backing out. You've seen the messages Kelly showed me. They want results or they walk. This is his last shot, and he'll take it. And you'll help him because you've burned every other bridge. Sherry stood again. And if we don't, then I go to the police with everything I have. Andre's already prepared the fraud charges. Stan Lake is ready to testify. Even if the emails are inadmissible, your lies to the neighbors aren't. You'll face charges, maybe not prison, but your reputation, your career, gone. Mitchell's background will be exposed. Every person you con will come forward. You destroy your own daughter. Jacob stood now, stepped closer. You tried to destroy me first. You wanted to lock me in a facility while you stole everything I built. Don't talk to me about family, Sherry. You gave that up when you looked at me and saw a payday instead of father. Sherry's face twisted. You were never going to give me anything. You were going to work until you died, hold on to that company with both hands, and leave me with scraps. I deserve more. You deserved what you earned. You chose not to earn it. She left without another word. Jacob watched through the window as she got in her car, sat there for 5 minutes before driving away. Joyce came downstairs. Did it work? We'll know tomorrow. Either they take the bait or they run. Either way, we win. Chapter 5, The Wire. The meeting was set for 7 p.m. Tuesday at the Hutchins construction office. Mitchell had called that morning, voice smooth as ever, suggesting they work together to find a solution that benefited everyone. Jacob had agreed, playing the confused older man perfectly. By 6 p.m., the office was wired. Kelly had installed 3 hidden cameras and 4 audio recorders, all feeding to a laptop in the back office where Stan Lake and Andre Evans waited. The equipment was legal. It was Jacob's property, and single-party consent applied in their state. Lorenzo was there too, playing his role. You sure about this? He asked Jacob. Once we get them on record, there's no going back. There's already no going back. At 6:58 p.m., Sherry and Mitchell arrived together. Mitchell wore an expensive suit, Sherry a conservative dress. They looked like professionals, like concerned family members. Jacob met them in the conference room, Lorenzo beside him. Thank you for meeting with us, Mitchell began, his smile warm. I know things have been difficult, Jacob. May I call you Jacob? You can call me Mr. Hutchins. Mitchell's smile tightened slightly. Mr. Hutchins, of course. Sherry's told me how confused you've been lately. The incident at the diner must have been frightening. What incident? Sherry and Mitchell exchanged a look perfect. On camera, it would look like shared concern. Jacob knew better. Dad, Sherry said gently, you had an episode. You thought your wallet was stolen. Don't you remember? Jacob let his eyes cloud with uncertainty. There was something. Maybe. This is why we're worried, Mitchell continued. You transferred your company to Mr. Barry here under unclear circumstances. We think you may not have fully understood what you were signing. Lorenzo's a good man, Jacob said. I trust him. Of course you do. But Mr. Barry, no offense, you're not a business manager. This company needs professional oversight. Sherry and I have been working with some excellent consultants who could help you both. You mean the investors who want to liquidate the company and sell off the assets? Jacob's voice sharpened. Mitchell blinked. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? Jacob pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. Kelmont Group. Vanguard Asset Management. Both known for hostile takeovers. Both meeting with you last week. Mitchell's smooth facade cracked. You've been following me? I've been protecting myself. Sherry leaned forward. Dad, you're paranoid. That's another symptom. We're trying to help. By having me declared incompetent? By stealing my company? That kind of help. No one's trying to steal anything. Sherry's voice rose. You're sick. You can't see it, but everyone else can. The neighbors see it. Your workers see it. Mom sees it. Your mother sees you for exactly what you are. The conference room door opened. Joyce walked in, followed by Stan Lake in uniform and Andre Evans carrying a briefcase. Mitchell stood. What is this? This, Jacob said, is where you confess. We're not confessing anything, Sherry said, but her voice shook. Stan moved to the door, blocking the exit. Andre placed a recorder on the table, an obvious one this time. You don't need to, Jacob said. You already did. Everything you've said since walking in here has been recorded. Video and audio. Admissible in court. Mitchell's face went from smooth to desperate. You can't. That's entrapment. It's my property. My equipment. Single-party consent state. Perfectly legal. Andre's voice was calm. You walked in here intending to convince a man you believe to be mentally incompetent to sign over his business. That's fraud, Mr. Burke. Or should I say Mr. Christian Burke? Your real name. Sherry looked at Mitchell. What's he talking about? Tell her, Jacob said. Tell her about Nevada. About the elderly couple who lost their home. About the real estate scam. Tell her who you really are, Mitchell. Mitchell's composure shattered. He grabbed his phone. I want my lawyer. Good idea, Stan said. You're going to need one. Sherry was shaking. Mitchell, what is he talking about? Your boyfriend, Jacob said, is a professional con artist. He found you, targeted you, convinced you to help him steal from me. You thought you were the mastermind, Sherry. You were just another mark. The blood drained from Sherry's face. No, we planned this together. Did you? Or did he plant every idea, feed every resentment, turn you into a weapon against your own father? Mitchell moved toward the door, but Stan blocked him. Sit down, Mr. Burke. I'm leaving. You can't hold me. Actually, I can. We have enough for an arrest right now. Attempted fraud, conspiracy, elder abuse. Andre pulled documents from his briefcase. Witness statements. Medical reports proving Jacob is completely competent. Records of your lies to the community. Sherry's meetings with investors. Your criminal background. And now, thanks to tonight, recorded evidence of you attempting to manipulate a business transfer through deception. Mitchell sat, slowly. Sherry was crying now, real tears this time. Daddy, You thought I was weak. You thought I was easy to manipulate. You thought wrong. Joyce moved beside Jacob, took his hand. Together, they watched their daughter break. Here's what happens now, Jacob said. Mitchell, you're going to be arrested. You're going to face charges for fraud, and your past is going to be part of that record. Nevada's going to be very interested to know where you've been. Stan pulled out handcuffs. Sherry, you have a choice. You can face charges as a co-conspirator, or you can cooperate fully. Testify against Mitchell. Admit everything to the neighbors you lied to. Sign a legal document renouncing any claim to my business or estate. Seek professional help. Maybe in a few years, we could talk about rebuilding. Maybe. You're giving her an out? Mitchell spat. She was in this as deep as me. She's my daughter, Jacob said quietly. And unlike you, I don't give up on family. But Sherry, hear me. This is the only chance you get. Refuse it, and you go down with him. Sherry looked at Mitchell, then at her father. The calculation was visible on her face, the same cold analysis that had started this whole nightmare. "I'll testify," she whispered. "I'll do everything you said." Mitchell lunged, but Stan was faster. The handcuffs clicked on. "You bitch. We had a plan. You used me." Sherry screamed. "You said we were partners. You were never my partner. You were a tool. A stupid, greedy tool." Stan pulled Mitchell toward the door. "That's enough. Let's go." As Stan led Mitchell away, his voice echoed down the hall. "This isn't over, Hutchins. I'll fight this." "Good luck with that," Andre called after him. The room went quiet except for Sherry's crying. Joyce released Jacob's hand and sat beside their daughter, not touching, just present. "I'm sorry," Sherry sobbed. "I'm so sorry." Jacob didn't respond. He gathered the documents, the recordings, the evidence of his daughter's betrayal. Sorry wasn't enough. It might never be enough. But watching Mitchell led away in handcuffs, knowing the truth was recorded and documented, knowing he'd protected everything he'd built, that was something. Chapter 6, The Aftermath. The arrest made local news. "Investment consultant arrested for fraud," read the headline. Mitchell Christian Burke's mugshot appeared alongside his real name, his Nevada record, and a brief summary of the charges. Jacob sat in his office the next morning, reading the article on his computer. His phone hadn't stopped ringing. Workers checking in, neighbors calling to apologize, clients wanting to make sure the business was stable. Angelo knocked on the door frame. "Boss, you got a minute?" "Always." Angelo sat, looking uncomfortable. "The guys want to know what's going on. There's rumors about Sherry, about you being sick, about the company being sold. I've been deflecting, but they deserve the truth." Jacob nodded. "Call a meeting. Everyone. Noon today. I'll explain everything." At noon, all 63 employees of Hutchins Construction crowded into the warehouse space. Framers, electricians, plumbers, office staff, project managers. Jacob stood on a work table so everyone could see him. "Most of you have heard rumors," he began. "Some of you have heard I'm sick, that I have Alzheimer's, that the company was being sold. I'm going to tell you exactly what happened, because you've all earned the truth." He laid it out, simplified but honest. The lies, the con, the arrest. He didn't spare his daughter, but he didn't dwell on her either. The company is secure. It always was. The transfer to Lorenzo was a legal strategy, and it's already been reversed. Your jobs are safe. Your contracts are safe. We're going to keep building, keep growing at our pace, and keeping the company we've always been. The relief in the room was palpable. A young carpenter named Dustin Conley raised his hand. "Mr. Hutchins, I'm sorry we believed it. Some of us did. We should have trusted you. You believed what you were told by someone who seemed trustworthy. That's not a failure. That's being human. What matters is how we move forward from here." After the meeting, Jacob spent the afternoon doing what he'd always done, reviewing projects, checking budgets, solving problems. Normal work, grounding work. At 4 p.m., Andre called. Mitchell Burke made bail. His lawyer's already filing motions, but with his record and the evidence we have, they're going nowhere. He'll take a plea deal within 6 weeks. I'd bet my license on it. And Sherry, she's cooperating. Gave a full statement this morning. She's been making calls to the neighbors, admitting the lies. It's not pleasant to watch. I didn't ask her to do that for pleasant reasons. Fair enough. One more thing. The investors Mitchell was working with, they've scattered. Turned out they were using shell companies that don't exist in any legal sense. If you'd actually signed anything with them, you'd have had no recourse. This could have been so much worse, Jacob. I know. That's why I didn't let it get that far. That evening, Jacob found Joyce in the garden, tending to the roses that would die soon in the coming cold. Sherry called. Joyce said without looking up. She wants to know if she can come by. To talk. What did you tell her? That I'd ask you. Jacob considered it. 3 weeks ago, he'd have said no immediately. Now, he wasn't sure. Not yet, he finally said. Maybe after the legal proceedings are done. Maybe after she's proven she's serious about changing. But not yet. Joyce nodded. I'm proud of you, for how you handled this. For being smarter than them. I'm not proud. I'm angry. I'm sad. Our daughter tried to destroy me. I know. Joyce finally looked at him. But you didn't let her. And you gave her a chance to make it right. even though you didn't have to. That's the man I married. That's the father she forgot you were. Jacob pulled his wife close. In the fading light, they stood together in the garden they'd planted 20 years ago, survivors of a war they'd never wanted to fight. Chapter 7. The Dominoes Fall. 6 weeks later, Mitchell Christian Burke stood in a courtroom wearing an orange jumpsuit and defeated expression. His expensive lawyer had convinced him that fighting the charges was pointless. The plea deal was harsh. 5 years in state prison, full restitution to Jacob for legal fees, and a permanent record that would follow him forever. The Nevada charges were being reopened. The elderly couple he'd scammed years ago would finally see justice. Jacob sat in the gallery with Stan, watching. He felt no triumph, no satisfaction, just a cold confirmation that actions had consequences. The judge accepted the plea. Mr. Burke, you targeted vulnerable people for profit. You showed no remorse until confronted with undeniable evidence. This sentence reflects the severity of your crimes. Bailiff, remand the defendant. Mitchell was led away. He didn't look back. Outside the courthouse, a reporter from the local paper approached Jacob. Mr. Hutchins, how does it feel to see your daughter's boyfriend go to prison? He wasn't her boyfriend. He was a predator who used her. And it feels like justice was done. That's all I have to say. The reporter persisted. Will you reconcile with your daughter? Jacob walked away without answering. That night, Sherry's written confession was published in the local newspaper. Not required by her plea agreement, but something she'd insisted on. It was thorough, humiliating, and brutally honest. I allowed greed and resentment to turn me into someone I despise. I lied about my father, a good man who never deserved what I tried to do to him. I manipulated friends and neighbors, violated trust, and nearly destroyed my family. I take full responsibility. I'm seeking therapy and will spend the rest of my life trying to make amends. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want people to know the truth. Angelo called Jacob after reading it. That took guts. Guts or strategy, Jacob said. Either way, it's done. The following week, Jacob held a neighborhood barbecue. Every family he'd visited during his investigation came. Stan brought his fishing buddies. Yvonne brought the whole neighborhood watch. Even Rachel Dunbar showed up, apologetic and embarrassed. I should have questioned it, Rachel said. I should have known you better. You know me now, Jacob replied. That's what matters. As the sun set over his backyard, Jacob surveyed the gathering. These people had believed lies about him, yes. But they'd also listened to the truth when he presented it. They'd given statements, supported him, stood beside him. This was the community he'd built, not just the business, but the life around it. And it had survived. Chapter 8. The Last Move. 3 months after Mitchell's sentencing, on a cold February morning, Jacob received an email from an address he didn't recognize. The subject line read, I understand now. He opened it carefully, half expecting malware. It was from Sherry. Dad, I've spent 3 months in therapy. Real therapy, the kind where you can't hide or make excuses. My therapist asked me to write down every lie I told about you. It took 11 pages. Mitchell didn't make me do this. He gave me permission to do what I already wanted to do, blame you for my own failures. I lost my job because I was bad at it, not because of office politics. I moved home because I had nowhere else to go, not to help you. I saw your success and felt entitled to it without earning it. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I'm writing because my therapist says I need to own every piece of what I did, and that includes admitting this. You were a good father. You taught me to work hard, to be honest, to earn what I have. I rejected every lesson because it was easier to be angry than to be accountable. I'll spend the rest of my life regretting what I did. Not because I got caught, because I hurt someone I loved. I don't expect to hear back from you. Sherry. Jacob read it 3 times. Joyce read it once, then set the laptop aside. What do you think? She asked. I think she's in therapy. I think she's saying what she needs to say to heal. I don't know if it's real or if it's performative. Do you care? Jacob thought about that. I don't know. Part of me wants to believe she's changed. Part of me knows that even if she has, it doesn't erase what she did. Are you going to respond? Not yet. Maybe not ever. She said she doesn't expect to hear back. I'll honor that. 2 weeks later, Lorenzo came to Jacob with news. Sherry applied for a job. Jacob looked up from his desk. What? She sent a resume to our general employment email. For an entry-level project coordinator position. Angelo flagged it before anyone else saw it. Jacob took the printed resume. It was professional, sparse. No embellishments, no exaggerations. At the bottom, a note. I understand if this application is immediately rejected. I'm applying because I want to learn the business the right way. If there's even a chance, I'm willing to earn it. What do you think? Lorenzo asked. I think she's either genuinely trying to change or playing a very long game. Which do you believe? Jacob stared at the resume for a long moment. His daughter's name at the top. The daughter who'd tried to destroy him. The daughter who'd written 11 pages of lies she'd told about him. I believe people can change, Jacob said finally. I also believe that some betrayals can't be undone. The question is which truth is stronger. He picked up a red pen, wrote a single word across the top of the resume. Interview. Give her an appointment, Jacob said. Not with me. With Angelo and Lorenzo. Let them decide if she's serious. If she passes their test, she can start at the bottom. Minimum wage, no special treatment, no family privileges. She works her way up or she fails on her own merit. And if she fails, then she fails. But I won't be the reason why. She wants a chance to earn redemption? Fine, but she'll actually have to earn it. Chapter 9, Foundation. 6 months after that interview, Sherry Hutchins worked in the Hutchins Construction Supply Warehouse, inventory management. She arrived before everyone else and left after most had gone. She ate lunch alone. She didn't ask for favors. Jacob watched from a distance, receiving reports from Angelo and Lorenzo. She was competent, quiet, professional. No complaints, no drama, just work. They didn't speak during those 6 months. Passed each other in hallways without acknowledgement. It was painful for Joyce, who saw them both separately, who carried messages neither asked her to carry. On the 7th month, Jacob assigned Sherry to a project team that needed an additional coordinator. It was a small residential job, a renovation for an elderly veteran named Bill Henry, a friend of Stan's. The project went smoothly. Bill called Jacob personally to thank him. That young woman on your team, the coordinator, she went above and beyond. Found me resources for veterans' home modifications I didn't know existed. Saved me thousands. Jacob said thank you and hung up. That afternoon, he found Sherry in the warehouse. You did good work on the Henry project. She looked up, surprise clear on her face. Thank you. Silence stretched between them. 7 months of silence. Actually, 7 months of careful distance. I'm not going to forget what you did, Jacob said finally. I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen. I know, but I'm also not going to punish you forever for trying to fix it. If you keep working like this, honestly, competently, without expecting special treatment, there might be a place for you here. Really here. Not because you're my daughter. Because you earned it. Sherry's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. I don't deserve. No, you don't. But maybe that's not the point. Maybe the point is what you do from here. Jacob turned to leave, then stopped. Your mother wants us to have dinner. Just the 3 of us. Next Sunday, if you're willing. I'd like that, Sherry said quietly. I'd like that very much. That Sunday, they sat around the same table where Jacob had confronted her months ago. Joyce had cooked pot roast, the same meal Sherry had made the night Jacob discovered her betrayal. The conversation was stilted at first. Careful. They talked about work, about the weather, about anything except the wound still healing between them. But near the end of the meal, Sherry set down her fork. I need to say something. I know I've apologized before, but I need to say it again here in this house. Dad, I'm sorry. Not because I'm afraid or because I want something. I'm sorry because you deserve better. You deserved a daughter who saw your strength and learned from it instead of one who saw it as something to exploit. I can't change what I did. I can only try to be different going forward. Jacob met his daughter's eyes. He saw remorse there, genuine and deep. But he also saw something else. Acceptance that some things can't be fixed, only survived. I'm not there yet, he said honestly. I'm not ready to say everything's okay. But I'm willing to see where this goes. One day at a time. That's more than I deserve, Sherry said. Yes, Jacob agreed. It is. Joyce reached across the table, took both their hands. Then we start from here. The next morning, Jacob arrived at the office early, as always. He unlocked the door, turned on the lights, made coffee. Through the window, he watched the sun rise over the building he'd bought, the business he'd built, the legacy he'd protected. His phone buzzed. A text from Angelo. New project just came in. Big one. Commercial complex. You want me to assign it? Jacob smiled and texted back. Assign your best team. Make sure they earn it. He sat at his desk, pulled up the project files,